Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So in this video we're going to take a look at an interview that just came out with Peter Beck by a quite new YouTube channel called Markets with Madison. She's a lady from New Zealand, and I think, can people from New Zealand confirm in the comments if I think correctly that she airs on New Zealand TV and she is like a CNBC or a New Zealand Jim Cramer, but prettier and smarter. And in any case, this is not the first interview that she has done with Sir Peter Beck, and they're all very high quality, and this one is no disappointment. She asks amazing questions. She gets Peter to talk about the Archimedes engine, what's happening with Neutron. She gets him to talk about next year's Electron sales and how they are looking, and there's lots and lots of good stuff for investors. So we're gonna look at this interview together. I'm going to keep my comments to the minimum, but I am going to add a few thoughts where it's necessary. And the original video is in the description box, and please subscribe to this channel. She's very new on YouTube, only has 186 subscribers, and I really like her content. And just before we start, I want to give a shout out to the channel members who support this channel. We're up to 13 members and 3 people, I think, on Patreon. So if you want to support the channel and you like what you're getting here, I really appreciate it. It really helps me put more attention on the channel. So let's begin the interview.
I signed a 10-launch deal with Japan's Inspected. I caught up with Rocket Lab's founder and CEO, Sir Peter Beck, just before he left for Japan. In this interview, the chief engineer takes a look down launch memory lane and points out who he plans to prove wrong next. Well, Sir Peter, thank you for having us in today. Always amazing to be here.
Oh, thanks very much.
Have you got used to that yet? It's still a bit weird.
Very odd. Very odd indeed.
I was going to curtsy when you came in,
Please
but I
don't.
decided
Please do not.
I don't think I'd be very good at it. But look, 50 launches, congratulations. It's not just a number though, is
No.
it, Peter? Electron is the fastest commercial developed rocket ever, even beating SpaceX to it. But take us behind that number into the operation.
Yeah.
What has actually been required from you as a leader of this company and your team and the engineering innovation that's gone on to achieve it?
Yeah, so I mean, everybody sees the rocket, right? But as you kind of allude to, there's just so much behind it. And the one thing I would say is, like, the very first rocket that we put on the pad, if you sat the first and the 50th beside each other, they look the same. And I think that's kind of key to the success here, is we didn't put a minimum viable product on the pad for some promotion. We put something there that was going to be the enduring thing that was going to work. And that's been very successful for us, and we've been able to scale it very successfully. But I think what a lot of people underestimate is the real hard thing here is not building one rocket. It's actually building many over and over again and making sure they launch reliably. That is just, it's hard to describe how immensely difficult that is. I mean, the product is very complicated, but all of the stuff and I lament in calling it boring stuff because it's not, but all of the supply chain and logistics and work instructions and ERP, MRP systems, like there's just so much goes in behind all of that, to make like a 50 number.
Does any of it get easier by 50?
Some gets easier, some gets harder. By the time you're at 50, there's some processes that are very, very well developed, and some things, they're very, very, well controlled. Launch day is just the same as number one. Like, launch day is just as kind of stressful as the very first rocket.
Do you have a ritual on launch day that keeps you calm?
Oh, I struggle on launch day. Generally
Still at 50?
Absolutely, because I mean, customers are relying on you just so much. Like, whether it's a commercial customer, their business could be on the line. Whether it's a national security customers, people's lives could be on the line. So, launch is never a low sum game. Like, it is always incredibly important.
I know you though, and you will be thinking about the next 50, probably the next 50 after that. So in your long-term mindset,
Yeah.
Where does 50 launches actually sit? Is it still the infancy of everything that Rocket Lab has ahead of it yet?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we'll continue to scale, and we want to keep that graph line pointing skywards. So we'll continue to scale. And I would say that part of Electron also is providing a new capability. So the market has to scale with us. And this year we sold the most amount of rockets we've ever sold, and next year is shaping up to be the same. So there's can you produce them fast enough? But there's also does the market growth continue to keep pace with you?
I'm going to talk.
This was a super interesting thing that he has said, and after following Rocket Lab for as long as I have, I've never heard them speak about this, which is basically that Electron is a new thing. And it doesn't have like a set demand. It's like it makes it possible for you to actually launch small satellites like Synspective, to create like smaller constellations and do things for a very low cost. But it doesn't have like a given market. So now that they have perfected Electron and they have done 50 launches, now they need the market to expand with them. And this is also why they're not ever able to answer the question of what's your final launch cadence? Are you going to go to 50 launches, 100 launches, 20 launches per year? Because it depends on the market. So this was a very interesting datum actually that I've never heard before.
A little bit later on, specifically on credibility and sort of your government contracts there as well. But just still on the engineering of this, like you've alluded to, we shouldn't actually underestimate how hard this is. Last time we spoke, you called this an assault on physics every single day. We know that so many other small launch vehicle operators have failed. So why specifically has the Electron succeeded?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons. One, we built a product that the customer wanted. Which sounds obvious, but it's not always in the space industry. Two, we built a product that was scalable from day one. So the engineering decisions that we made were made around how can we produce this over and over again? How can we make sure this is the most reliable thing? And then I would say that don't underestimate being the underdog. We were never the preordained winner of the small launch race. We went up against folks that were immensely more well-funded than us and well-resourced than us. And sometimes that's a great thing. And, the team here at Rocket Lab is incredible. And I can put my hand on my heart now and say they are the best in the world because we have the statistics to prove it. But honestly, it's the team and the pure grit and determination of everybody that makes it through.
Did you ever doubt it throughout that journey?
Doubt that we would
be this globally successful and hit 50? Well,
I think as an entrepreneur, if you have those doubts, then you quit. So no, not trying to be arrogant or anything, but we playing to win here. We're not playing to kind of fudge around the edges. We're looking to win.
Electron's known for having democratized space, for putting pressure on the price to access space. Do you have any figures on just how much that price has reduced in the small lift space?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started with the Electron launch vehicle, the price to get a small payload, say a 200 kg payload to orbit, was somewhere between 35 and 50 million US dollars. More generally sort of in that $50 million US dollar range. The average sticker price for an Electron rocket is 7.5 million. So, it was a massive change and massive shift. And of course, that creates totally new opportunities in space.
It's not just about democratization, though, is it? What Electron has also enabled is advances in other things like science, defense, and other technology. Can you talk me through what you've seen and what you're proud of in that?
Well, look, the missions. So, the last two missions that we just launched more than a few days and a week ago, two really important climate change missions for NASA, measuring the heat rejection out of the poles to understand how the ice caps are melting and sea level rises. You saw it on the sign when you walked in here. We go to space to improve life on Earth, and that is we do that every day. And that one mission alone should be enough. But we have 50 of those missions, 49 of those missions that all have massive impact.
Do you have a favourite?
Oh.
Is that like asking you to pick a favourite child?
Brutal child. So the favourite for me is very personal in the fact that my dream as a kid in Invercargill was to go and work for NASA. And, when we got to fly the first NASA mission, the first NASA payload for the VCLS contract that we won, that was very special because It was like, I didn't get to work for NASA, but I got to fly their stuff.
A little bit better.
A little bit better, yeah. So yeah, that one was very, very personal in that respect, because it was very rarely do you have these moments where you kind of go, oh, didn't expect that. So, but that was one.
I kind of view this all as the new SaaS model. We hear a lot about software as a service, but this is space as a service.
100%.
And you even have not only NASA, but governments coming to you more so now for end-to-end missions. Look at the Victus Hayes mission, for example.
Yep.
Tell me about the change in the desires and demand that you've witnessed across 50 launches in the industry, and how that's ultimately benefiting Rocket Lab.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, we were always of the view that an end-to-end space company was the logical endpoint. And the very second Electron that ever flew had a kick stage that had recesses for solar panels to turn it into a satellite. So the plan here was always, build rockets first, you need the keys to space first. Then you need the tools once you get to the space, so you need the satellites. But ultimately, you need the service. And that's where we're trying to go, is build this end-to-end service. And it's become really, really obvious, I would say, in the last year or two, with Starlink is a good example. So, if you're in the commercial telecoms business from space, you're in a very difficult spot right now, because...
Was that a hint? Please let me know in the comments, because he calls out, if you're in the telecom business, you're in a very bad space, because how are you going to compete with SpaceX or maybe Rocket Lab? Let me know in the comments if you think that was a hint.
It's impossible to keep up with the ability for someone to build their own rocket and launch it whenever they need to launch it and deploy that service. And that is consistent across all services in space. So our view here is like the very large space companies of the future are going to look exactly like Rocket Lab. They're going to be end-to-end. You can build whatever satellite you want to build, you can launch whatever you want to launch, and then you can provide that service.
And 2/3 of this business is space systems.
Correct.
And while we're celebrating launch and rockets, that's actually only 1/3 of your business and your revenue.
Correct.
You can't celebrate.
This lady really did her research well. I wonder, do you guys think she's a Rocket Lab shareholder? Because she really did the research well for this video.
Much of the space systems success, because a lot of it is confidential and customers wouldn't want you to, but can you give us some insight into what's actually been achieved in the bigger part of the business while 50 launches have been happening?
Yeah, look, I mean, we acquired 4 companies within 6 months of becoming public. Don't recommend that, but it needed to be done, and it was a very unique time in the industry to consolidate. So, we really built a repertoire of all of the basic key elements to build whatever spacecraft we need to build. This year we'll see 2 spacecraft designed and built exclusively by Rocket Lab go to Mars. And when they get to Mars, 20% of everything in orbit around Mars will have a Rocket Lab logo on it. So, we get to play in these really, really, important and fun missions. But, as you say, the space systems part of the business represents, over 2/3 of the revenue. Once Neutron comes online, that'll probably shift a little bit, and then things will move around a little bit. But it is a really, really important element, to the business.
We are definitely going to talk about Neutron, but just still quickly on Electron. What this feels like is a real celebration of not Rocket Lab's success so much as it is its credibility and what it's achieved there as well. You're now getting funding from governments. It seems like every week there's a new announcement now.
Yep.
You just had more funding in the US CHIPS Act and also some from the state of New Mexico.
Yep.
Talk to me about the ramp up in credibility and where you think Rocket Lab has sort of achieved and hit its highest credibility, and perhaps where in other markets it still has more space to run.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think depending on where you sit in the industry in the world, generally we're accepted as the number 2 to SpaceX in that sense. So, and I would say that, credibility comes with execution. You can have all the flowery videos you want and proclamations of things you're going to do, but at the end of the day, you actually have to just do it and do it well. And it's almost like a logarithmic curve in some respects, because the bigger you get, the more missions you can do. The more missions you do, the more credibility you get, and so on and so forth. So, it feels like any overnight success, right? You just slave away for years and years and years, and then you reach this point where you start to get on the hockey stick, and that's where we are now, I would say, is that, yeah, we have a critical mass. We have a couple of thousand people and, a critical mass of projects and expertise and, quite frankly, reputation. And reputation is earned, especially in the space industry. It's earned with blood, sweat and tears.
And that curve, is that a signal of what's to come with Neutron, the same speed to 50?
Well, we certainly hope so. That is the plan, and we're following the exact same methodology as we did with Electron. You may have seen the Archimedes rocket engine go on the test stand, and that's not a tech demo of a rocket engine. That came off a production line, and that's kind of how we roll. So we're following the same song sheet as we did with Electron.
Okay, so it's something doesn't make sense to me about the Archimedes testing, because if it came from a production line, so that means that they have set up machines, they have set up factory spaces, and you only do that if you're really crazy confident that the engine was going to work, right? But at the same time, we were promised a hot fire test in Q2 this year, and Q2 is ending next week. So either this next week is very, very exciting, or there is something that they're running into. And obviously, when you're very confident in your design and you invest into machines and you set up production lines, it's not so easy and quite costly to change. So that can potentially be a big flop. So I really would like to know and understand what is happening with this hot fire test. And next week, we should be getting an update from it.
And that's been very successful for us.
Give us an update on Neutron. We know that you've pushed it out, the first launch to 2025, but Archimedes is about to be tested. What are you still left to do before we can see it on a launch pad?
Well, so here's the thing with the rocket program is everybody focuses on the rocket. And I would say the rocket is like 20% of the program. There's the launch site, all the launch infrastructure, the factories, the engine test facilities, and all the productionizing of all of that stuff. So there's and it's not that sexy, and it's all kind of hidden in the background, but there's a tremendous amount of work that's gone on in there. So I mean the really exciting kind of milestones, obviously for Neutron that everybody is following is obviously Archimedes engine, big structures rolling out, and kind of the big integrated tests. But like I say, it's really frustrating. It's like you're baking a cake, and all the ingredients in themselves are completely uninteresting, and when it's all mixed up in a goo, it doesn't look that attractive either. But actually, when you bring it out of the oven, it's like it's done.
We want to eat the cake. We want to eat the cake.
Yeah, that's right. But there's just so much work and preparation that's gone in before you pull it out of the oven, and that's kind of the same deal.
And there's no room for error, is there? Really?
Not in this industry, no. This is kind of, and maybe the success of Electron as well is, when we designed that vehicle, we constantly think of every failure mode possible. Like, could there be a failure in this area? Could there be a failure in that area? And we're constantly looking to try and mitigate those failures before you occur. We don't kind of blindly move forward on a design without considering every little possible element.
With Neutron, you effectively get to start over. On a new rocket, right? You're probably doing a lot of things with Neutron that you wish you could have or knew how to do with Electron at the very beginning. You're now having to build those on secondary with Electron, like reusability. And we know that Neutron has far better unit economics because its mass to orbit, its load is much higher. Does that mean that once Neutron is consistently in play, you would look to retire Electron?
No, look, Electron is serving a really important market need, and it's a great product, and that market continues to grow. So, yeah, it's true. Electron has been a wonderful kind of, training environment, if you will, for Neutron in a lot of respects. And so much of Electron ports directly across over to Neutron. But Electron is an amazing product. It enables so many other businesses and so many other capabilities. So absolutely not. It is a critical part of the space industry right now.
And you're targeting a similar margin on Electron that you are on Neutron, 50%, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So we think that's the real sweet spot. And the biggest lever to pull there is really cadence. Launch cadence kind of allows us to advertise all of the infrastructure that requires, to launch anything.
What's the dream on cadence? What would you love to at least see Electron get to per year?
Yeah, look, I mean, if we're launching twice a month, the economics are exactly where they need to be. So that's kind of the super sweet spot for us. But also, as we launch more, we get better at building them, and the cost goes down. The cadence doesn't need to be some crazy number to be a really great business, which is great.
Let's just finish on competition. I know you're a very busy man and you probably don't pay too much attention to it because you're hustling in here. You've got a lot to do being chief engineer at this company.
Yep.
But SpaceX just had its 4th Starship test flight.
Yeah.
The splashdown was pretty successful.
Yeah.
How much attention do you pay to that? And if any at all, how does that kind of up the ante for you and for the team in here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, look, it was a great flight. I think everybody was surprised, how far that mission got through. So I think it's great. With respect to like how does that affect what we're doing? It's not really. I mean, look, Starship is designed for a very specific purpose, and that is to put humans on Mars, which I think is wonderful. We have a very own purpose and mission, and Electron and Neutron and all the space systems and everything we do feeds into that directly. So the space industry is kind of a crazy place in that respect. You have you have very flamboyant kind of characters and missions on their own journey. I mean, Jeff Bezos has his own journey as well. But I guess from a Rocket Lab perspective, what we're really focused on is trying to build a large multi-generational space company that really does focus on delivering services and good to the Earth as opposed to other planets.
When I was in here last, you kind of laughed off the idea of space tourism, like what Jeff Bezos is doing. You said you didn't want to go to Mars.
No.
You change your view on any of those?
Nope, absolutely not. Yep, no, I love Earth. Earth is the best planet in our solar system.
Going to stay here for a while yet.
Stay here.
Hey, thank you so much. And again, congratulations.
So that was the interview. For me, the most interesting parts were this new data about Electron, that they need the market to expand with it. And he did mention that they sold the most amount of Electrons this year, and next year is looking good already. And I guess he means that, meaning it's looking like they are going to sell even more. So that's just good news for us as investors. Then the second very interesting thing is him reiterating that they are not in a rush to get an MVP on the pad just to show investors fire. They are good with finances. They don't need the investors they don't need to get the investors excited. And the Archimedes engine came from a production line. It wasn't an MVP that went there, which, again, as I said, like for me, there's some, like, I don't get why there is no hot fire test yet and what's the issue, but I'm not a rocket scientist, so maybe I'm making an issue out of something that isn't an issue at all. Yeah, anyways, this next week is going to be very, very exciting on that. And again, all in all, it was a great interview. We heard that 24 is the ideal cadence for Electron. Yeah, all in all, very, very good data. So please make sure that you subscribe to her channel because she's new on YouTube. Crazy low subscriber count and crazy low view count on this interview. And if you like this channel and want to support it, then consider joining and becoming a channel member. And I'll see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.